Hi, this is Todd Carpenter, and today I'm here to talk about winning in the consumer real estate search experience. While Indiana only has to compete at the state level, I think it's important to look at the national real estate portal traffic overall to get an idea of who your competition is. In this case, the number one most trafficked site is now Zillow.com, followed by Trulia, and then Realtor.com. More importantly, Zillow also powers Yahoo Homes, Front Door Real Estate, and a few others, and their total market share is about 20%. It's also important to note that Trulia, Zillow, and Realtor.com have substantial mobile traffic as well, and that's not always tracked by Experian or ComScore. So obviously, Zillow and Trulia are attracting a ton of traffic, and they're getting a lot of that traffic from Google and Bing, other search engines as well. There's a lot of debate as to why they garner as much traffic as they do and why they consistently rank number one and number two when you do a particular search for real estate. A lot of people think it's unfair linking practices, or there's some kind of black hat SEO, or they have all these widgets that they have installed on other people's sites. But realistically, the reason why they do so well is because they have a dedication to what I call non-transactional content. So many times in the real estate industry, the agent or the broker or the MLS concentrates their efforts around the transaction, which of course makes sense because that's where they make their money. But Zillow and Trulia, and now more and more Realtor.com, have taken a more holistic approach. They're trying to rank for properties whether they are for sale or not. Here the idea is to either acquire or buy or license every possible bit of data about a property that they can and publish it to their sites. What they want to do is have a great resource for Google to go to and track and update and index for a property years before it's ever on sale. Then when the home is for sale, all it really changes is that an agent has now listed it and there's a listing price and a description, but Google still sees that trusted resource for a property address and still wants to rank Trulia or Zillow or Realtor.com number one. Let's look at some examples. First off, Zillow is kind of famous now for the Zestimate, and we're going to talk about Zestimates a little bit later in the presentation, but from an SEO standpoint, the Zestimate is a constantly changing number, and each time Google or Bing goes back to that site, they see a different number, which means this is dynamic, active information that always changes. That encourages Google and Bing and other sites like that to come to the site more often and regard the site as trusted information in real estate. Next, Zillow is just listing some basic information about the home. How many bedrooms, how many baths. It's nothing really that special, but think about when an agent goes in and generates a listing. What are the things that they're listing? How many bedrooms, how many baths, how many square feet? So when Google comes along and indexes an agent's site to see that information when it's published, it's nothing new. It's something that Zillow or Trulia, the other sites, have been doing for years. Beyond basic data, they're looking for any other kind of data that they can put out. In this case, for the same property, Trulia includes these informational maps about the property. They include everything from crime to traffic commutes to schools, any kind of data that they can put out that makes their site a resource for Google. In addition, Trulia is gathering user-generated content from the consumers that go to the site. In this case, they allow those consumers to rate a particular neighborhood. Things like how safe they feel like the neighborhood is, how pet-friendly it might be, how walkable it is, what the traffic is like. All of this is information that helps a consumer get a better idea of the neighborhood, but in addition is just more content for Trulia to gather and Google to index. So if you were ever really wondering why Trulia and Zillow, Realtor.com rank so well for every address search, the easiest way to see the results is to go search for a property right now that's not for sale. And you're going to see that these sites are really the best resources for information about those properties. What really changes in the eyes of Google when a house goes up for sale? There's only a minimal amount of additional information out there about it. And even though it might be the most important information for a consumer to see, all that groundwork is still really valuable, and that's why they continue to rank so well for virtually every property in the United States. All right, let's go back to the Zestimate or estimates. Estimates are part of a system called AVM's, Automated Valuation Model. It's not a new technology. CoreLogic invented it quite a long time ago, and the lending industry has been using it for many, many years. The only thing that Zillow really did was bring it to the public. And they had a good reason for it. Even though it's not particularly accurate, you have to think about what consumers want. When they go to a real estate website, they have three primary questions that they're trying to answer. Is now a good time for me to buy or sell a house? What homes are for sale? And what is my home worth? Obviously, is now a good time for me to buy or sell a house is something that real estate agents and even MLS's brokers are all great at answering that. They can talk about the market and what's going on, use their expertise. It's really kind of their highest value proposition to the consumer that they can interpret this information. And of course, what homes are for sale, that can be done really easily with any sort of real estate search, which is either through the MLS or IDX driven. But the what's my home worth question, because real estate agents are trying to get that number so right, they often need more information. And so what they've always done is viewed this as a way to go ahead and get the consumer to contact them. The only thing is, consumers aren't necessarily ready to be contacted at that exact moment. They're just beginning their search for real estate. They just now are wondering what their house might be worth. And I liken it to when you go into Best Buy and you want to buy a DVD player. And so you walk in the door and you look over in the corner and you see the wall of DVD players. And as you walk to that wall, you have 3 or 4 kids in blue shirts come up to you and ask if they can help you. And of course you say, no, I'm just looking. And that's what these consumers are doing right now. They're just looking. They're not ready to talk to a salesperson. And then, of course, once you get over to that wall of DVD players and you see, all this information about each different DVD player on the tags, and this one's got the Blu-ray, and this one's got the HDMI, and this one can burn DVDs, and after a little while, you're thinking, where's one of those guys in the blue shirt that can help me figure this out? And that's really the business model of Zillow and Trulia, is that they're trying to get that information to the consumer so that they can start making a decision knowing that they're going to need a real estate agent down the line, which is where they sell their advertising products. So what you have to remember here is that Zillow is just giving consumers a starting point for determining the value of their home. Accurate or not, it's not really that important. Consumers have already decided that a computer-generated value number is still better than no number at all. And because they're not ready to talk to a salesperson, it's something that they want. I am not suggesting that the MLS adopt an estimate model. That may be something down the line that probably wouldn't be very popular with your current members, but this is something that's valuable to consumers, and you want to be able to provide information to help consumers determine what their house is worth. That could be an AVM model, or it could just be as simple as listing out some information about recently sold homes. Okay, so let's talk about agent profiles, ratings, and reviews. Beyond being this resource for every property in America, Zillow and Trulia want to be a resource for consumers to discover agents and then find out more information about those agents. And so they offer these free agent profiles, and then they also offer things like recommendations and reviews. Currently, Zillow has published over 250,000 reviews of local real estate agents. Initially, the idea of being rated by the consumer and having that published to a website was a pretty intimidating thought for a lot of real estate agents, but more and more of them are embracing the idea of having reviews, mainly because they know if they do a good job that they're going to have a lot of positive comments about their expertise published online. And so these sites are becoming more and more popular. Some MLSs and even NAR has recently launched some beta programs for review sites. There's MLSs like the Houston Association of Realtors, and I know some in Illinois that have kind of like embraced this idea of doing agent reviews. The important thing to remember here is that agent ratings are desired by customers, and they're here to stay. So I think it's an important place to be looking for, or actually an important opportunity for MLSs to consider when they're trying to generate more content about real estate. In addition, a huge advantage to hosting these types of profiles and ratings is that you then become a resource for Google about real estate agents. And so take, for example, a local agent here in Indiana. This person has a LinkedIn profile, they have a Facebook profile, and sure enough, right there in the top 5 of their results is their profile on Trulia. As an MLS, wouldn't you like to be ranked in the top 5 for a search for every real estate agent that's a participant in your system? Another area where Zillow especially has done a great job is in the home financing segment. They have built a great online mortgage marketplace where consumers can enter in their information about their financial needs and get quotes from mortgage brokers who can't actually harass them or talk to them yet. It's a transaction system that goes through Zillow so that the consumer doesn't have to give up their personal information, just the details about their personal information, like their possible credit score and their financial situation, but not actually their social or their phone number or their email. I think that this is a interesting spot that an MLS could potentially take advantage of. I think it's also important, though, to communicate with the brokers that you already have and find out how much they have invested in home financing themselves. If you have a ton of brokers who have in-house mortgage financing, they may not appreciate this being on your public-facing MLS site. But it might be an opportunity, and I think it's worth investigating. With the launch of Zillow Digs, Zillow is now also getting into the home improvement business. This is a platform that allows consumers, one, to plan the redesign of their homes, and then also look for the professionals to help them do that. And it's still up in the air as to how popular this will be or how powerful the marketplace platform that they're building will have, what kind of effect it'll have on the contractor world. But one thing is for sure, it's obvious now that Zillow is building a site that lets consumers or connects with consumers throughout their entire process of owning a home. So from the time that they rent to the time that they're looking to buy a house to the time that they're looking to build an addition onto their house or redo the kitchen to the time that they want to refinance their house and then when they want to sell it. Zillow is covering them at all bases. And there are a lot of pundits out there that talk about how much traffic Zillow gets versus how many transactions a year that there actually are, and they use that to criticize Zillow and say, oh, it's all just real estate porn, that's not real traffic. Well, it is real traffic, it's just traffic that's not around the transaction yet. They're endearing and they're gaining fans long before and long after the transaction, and I think it's really important to think about that. So speaking of rentals, Trulia, they mark that they had 100% year-over-year increase in rental traffic or rental visitors, and their mobile visitors were triple year-over-year from last year. I think this is really important. I keep talking about outside the transaction, but this is a great example. When I left the National Association of Realtors and started working at Trulia.com, I would tell my non-real estate friends, and they'd ask me, what company are you working for now? And I'd say, Trulia.com. And they go, oh, I know that company. I have their rental app. And think about that for just a minute. Not only were they not associating Trulia with real estate transactions, instead rentals, but they were not even associating them as a .com. They were associating them as a mobile app. And of course, they have a great mobile app. Here's a great example of the differences or the lead that both Zillow and Trulia have built by embracing rentals early on. This is a search that was done in my neighborhood while I was still in Denver, and you can see there's about a dozen different rentals in my neighborhood, that are available. And if you look at the same app in Realtor.com, you can see that there are two listings. This was taken, obviously, before the board of directors for the National Association of Realtors met this summer in order to figure out what to do about the gains that Trulia and Zillow had made over Realtor.com and traffic. And as a result, the board now has voted to allow Realtor.com to list more, they call it unlisted, it's outside the MLS data. Primary to that is being able to list far more rentals so that their rental app actually has enough listings in it that consumers want to use it. HAR, in Houston, they also have done a lot of studies on rentals, and their own advice, the study's own advice to the board at HAR was to aggressively build out their rental section. I think that they had two really important stats that were worth looking at. 38% of people surveyed had previously owned a home that were looking at rentals or that were currently renting. And then 59% that they said they considered buying a home instead of renting. So these aren't people that just can't buy. These are people that are a 12-month lease away from buying again. And right now, Zillow and Trulia are focusing on grabbing those customers before they're even thinking about the sale. I think this is a real opportunity for any MLS with a public-facing site to start building out a rental center. I think really the best example of it is Utah has built a site called propertypond.com, and it's a statewide real estate search for rentals as opposed to just real estate listings. This is a great way to garner those future customers. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is realtor rules. And Zillow and Trulia have another advantage by not being part of the realtor family, and that's that they don't have to adhere to some of these written or unwritten rules or taboos or customs. I call them realtor rules. The MLS has the most accurate data set of active listings being marketed by agents. We all know that, right? But Zillow has what they call the most comprehensive database of listings. And when you include things like distressed properties and new home construction that isn't listed in the MLS and homes that are listed without an agent for sale by owner homes, they do actually have a ton more listings than you will find on the MLS. Now, are these the best listings? Are these the most likely listings that are going to turn into a transaction? We all know that's not the case. But consumers, especially consumers that are frustrated with their real estate search that haven't found that right home, they're going to keep looking in places where there might be a new opportunity. And so sites like Craigslist and places like Zillow are always going to be able to garner some extra traffic because they're willing to post the listings that, while they may not be as accurate or as likely to go through, they're still listings that the MLS has traditionally avoided. I don't know how an MLS could start listing for sale by owners. I'm not recommending that they do, but I'm also saying that in the consumer's eyes, this is something that is an advantage for Zillow and not necessarily a disadvantage. Okay, next let's talk about user experience. And this is one of those areas where our MLS has already made a really good decision in choosing Red to build out the website. It's a consumer-friendly site, it's an attractive design, and I think that they have just laid it out beautifully. I'm going to show you a couple examples of why, but also, in Denver, Metrolist, the local MLS, they also used Red to build out their site. And it's made a huge difference in how well consumers interact with that site. And I think you guys are in store for, or you've set the foundation for a great beginning. So for me, I think the biggest advantage to using Red is the adoption of really big pictures on the site. This is something that Trulia has also adopted lately, and consumers are more engaged on a site that's more visually attractive, and they want to see pictures of the home, and the way that the site presents those pictures is just really fantastic. On top of that, I think that the way that they've layered that additional data down in the just below the pictures the schools, the walk scores, neighborhood information, property information, and the way that it's layered, this is a great way to surface a ton of information about the property and the neighborhood around it without overwhelming the user with a bunch of text all on the exact same page. I also really like the open call to action over on the right-hand side. The open form is a lot more engaging than a button where someone has to push it before they fill out the information. They can see that they're only going to have to fill out a few fields to submit to get some more information about the site. It's also really great that there's just no misunderstanding about who the listing broker agent is. This is just a great way for the MLS to gain fans within, from their participants and deliver some leads to those participants. So I think that you've done a great job here. And then finally, I really like the My Ratings down in the bottom corner there. This is a great way to get users engaged in the site. Once they start rating stuff, they're going to want to sign up for more information, and it's just a perfect way to engage consumers, let them almost take some notes about the properties that they love, and then be able to capture that information and deliver it to the agent. Okay, so now I want to talk about search algorithm, and I think this is something that MLSs need to look at in the future. It's an issue that is going to be complicated for them to deal with, and maybe there isn't a way to deal with it, but right now, when you do a search on an MLS site or an IDX site, most likely the search results that are given back to the user are, hey, if I search between $100,000 and $125,000 for a home, you're going to get the $125,000 one, and then the $124,999 one, and so on and so on. They're very fair in the way that they list out the homes, and every agent kind of gets equal billing. On Zillow and Trulia, it's not that way. So what they've done, of course, they promote the people who pay the most, to have like premium placement on the site. Those particular agents have higher search results. Usually those agents are also delivering more pictures and a better listing in general, so that's also good for the consumer. But they go beyond this. They have an algorithm that identifies several different things about what the consumer is doing and uses it to deliver results. So, for instance, they measure the consumer that is on the site, and as that consumer surfs around the sites, decides, consistently looks at, for instance, homes that are bungalows or homes that have stainless steel appliances in the kitchen or homes that are modern. They realize that this particular person likes a particular style of home, and then through that algorithm, they start to deliver results higher up that are more likely to be the home that the consumer likes. So the longer the consumer over days or weeks or even just a few minutes on the site, the longer that they search, the more likely that those search results will change to deliver them something that they really like. Now, like I said, this is something that one agent's going to end up getting more, higher placement than another. I don't know how an MLS deals with that. But because Zillow and Trulia are doing this, they're going to be able to make a more engaging experience for their consumer when it comes to that user experience. And it's just something that long term, I think that every MLS should be thinking about this. How can we deliver some sort of search results that could match the predictive analytics that Zillow and Trulia are employing to deliver a great search experience? All right, so the last big core competency that Zillow, Trulia, and also Realtor.com have really built out is their mobile experience. NAR and Google did a joint research paper last year where they said that 68% of home shoppers at the onset and throughout their research used a mobile application. Not just the web, which is like 90%, but the actual mobile app to help them do that search. At this point, Zillow's traffic is more mobile than it is web-based, desktop-based. they're getting more mobile traffic every day, and in fact, as high as 60% and even 70% sometimes on the weekends in their last reports. So they're very much thinking that they're not necessarily web companies anymore as much as they are mobile companies. Trulia, for instance, has already built a Google Glass app. Has anyone actually seen these Google Glasses that you put the glasses on and there's a heads-up display that gives you computer information that you can see that no one else can? Everyone that wears them kind of looks like a dork, but it's this new technology. I've never seen a pair of Google Glasses. Trulia has already built an app for it. Zillow, they build apps with iOS and with Android that basically come out the day that the releases for new product features from iOS and Android come out, because they worked with them ahead of time to build those apps out. These guys have a huge dedication to mobile, and while your site looks good on a mobile web, I think that as you go down the road, the real estate search is going to be far more about mobile than it is about the web, and it's something that in the future you're definitely going to want to develop for. All right, so that is a lot of stuff, right? They're doing a lot of things really well, and to truly beat them, it's definitely going to be very difficult. To stay in the race with them, though, I think that there's some core things that the MLS can do to be right there. And so let's boil it down to 3 things that I think you need to do. Issue number 1, I think, is investing in sold data on your website or publishing that sold data on your site. Remember when I was talking about Zestimates and those 3 questions that real estate visitors, consumers have when they go to a site? Is now a good time to buy or sell a house? What homes are for sale? And what is my home worth? I think that listing some sold data, maybe not all of it, or maybe not only listing the most recent stuff for a certain amount of time, but some of that sold data is going to give consumers that little bit of information that they can then use to get started, to get comfortable with what the number might be, so that when they're ready to talk to an agent, they feel somewhat prepared. And of course, that information could end up being a lot different than what the actual marketability of their house is, but it's a comfort level for them. And I think that while an AVM is really cool and the Zestimate is something that is pretty amazing when you think about what it is, even though it's not particularly accurate in a non-disclosure state especially, but it's giving consumers information that they want. And while I don't think that a MLS would really want to invest in an AVM, I think it would make a lot of real estate agents in your market pretty upset. I do think listing out some of that sold data is a way to give consumers what they want without upsetting your participants because you've done something like the Zestimate. In addition to satisfying a consumer demand, I also think that you could use sold data as one of those tools to build that non-transactional content that I was talking about at the beginning of the presentation. So, if you go to, for instance, Trulia in many other markets and start to drill down and do searches for homes, you're going to see these active listings on the map, but then you're also going to see how Trulia surfaces that sold data. And if you click onto any one of those particular homes, you're going to see that they've listed, they start to surface that information about the home, even though it's not for sale. They'll even use like Google Street View to provide pictures of that home. And of course, as you scroll down, you see that sold data, which is, again, active, dynamic data that can be changed and updated, that Google will then recognize and begin to look at your site as one of those trusted resources on every property, at least in Indiana, as opposed to Zillow or Trulia. And it would allow you guys to rank better when it comes to the search engines. So when it comes to sold data, I think my recommendation is include some level of sold information so consumers can begin to investigate what their property might be worth and start winning that SEO battle for the next time the property is actually for sale. So I think the core issue number 2 for your new site is to look for ways to build as much traffic as possible. And This might go down as somewhat of a crazy idea, but I think that this is a way that you could definitely generate some additional traffic, and that is to look for ways to leverage the traffic on Zillow and Trulia. And so, for example, MRED, which is the regional MLS in the Chicagoland area, they've partnered with Trulia to syndicate their listings directly to Trulia. And of course, this is an opt-in system, so only the brokers who actually opt into the the syndication have their listings sent to Trulia. It's not putting out data that of brokers who don't want their listings to go there, but for the ones that do, they can send it directly from the MLS to Trulia and not go through a source like ListHub or Point2. Now, why is that important? Because Trulia, as part of their data pledge, will link to the source of every listing. And it's not a follow link, so it's not an SEO thing, but they do actually provide a link that the consumer can click on. So in the case of like an NRT customer, a big brokerage, they have their own feeds, they've set up their profiles, and so the source of a particular listing is most likely, the broker website. And in a lot of cases, in probably half the cases, when you look at any particular listing in Chicago, you'll see the broker as the person that you link to. But there's a lot of brokers and a lot of listing agents who just put their stuff on the MLS. They want it to go out to all these other sources, but they don't take the time to, for instance, fill out a profile on Trulia. And so when Trulia doesn't have any additional information, they link to the source. And when you use Point2 or when you use ListHub, they link to a Point2 or a ListHub page that has property information about that particular listing. And then ListHub and Point2 then deliver that traffic back to the MLS or to the broker. I think that there's a better opportunity here. If your consumers if your brokers are already saying, yeah, we want to syndicate to these sites, syndicating directly means that your website, your MLS website, could be that source that they link to. So in the cases where local brokers haven't set up their profiles, when they click on that link, the traffic comes back to your MLS. So in this example, even though MRED doesn't have a public-facing website, they have all of these property description pages set up for the public to see. When Trulia publishes a listing from a broker who hasn't set up their profile and someone clicks on that link, it goes to this MLS site. In your case, this could be going to your public website. And I think this would be one way to generate more traffic to the site. Use the traffic that Zillow and Trulia get and figure out if there's a way that you can get them to deliver traffic to you. Another way to generate some traffic for your site is to take advantage of the fact that reindiana.com has a pretty cool mobile aspect to it. The site looks really good on a mobile phone. And so when you have an agent or brokerage that hasn't invested in mobile yet, that wants a place for consumers to go to see the site from their phone, you guys can provide it. And of course, they have that security of knowing that if I send a consumer to a property description page of my listing, the only contact information there is going to be for me. So they have a lot of confidence in that particular page. Why not provide some short links or QR codes or whatever it is? Just encourage your own base to put this on their signs, a place where obviously a consumer nowadays isn't going to write down a URL on a sign and go home and look at it there. They're going to pull it up on their phone. So let them use the mobile technology that you've already paid for and deliver some traffic to your site at the same time. So while we're on the topic of mobile, I think mobile is that third key core issue that the MLS needs to address. You guys have already done a great job of building a website that's mobile friendly. The next step is to start taking a serious look at mobile apps. The actual applications are the things that consumers are using right now. And so, I think your decisions are, do you want to build this yourself? Do you want to engage with a vendor? Can Red help you with this? Or are you better off looking at some other different vendors? Maybe you may want to consider trying to team up with Zillow or Realtor.com or or Trulia, and possibly there's a way that their systems could provide that mobile strategy for you. But one way or another, I think it's really important to start looking at what are we going to do about mobile, because 2 or 3 years from now, the web part is kind of going to be the secondary part of the search. Most people are going to be using mobile, not the web, and you don't want to be left behind. Beyond those core issues, I think there's a few other things that you would at least want to take a look at. And I think considering the idea of incorporating more rental listings is something that could really help, one, deliver more traffic to your site, and two, get consumers to think about you before they're ready to buy a house. This is something that Realtor.com has definitely made a big push to do a better job at, and I think it's something that the MLSs can do well. So remember, UtahRealEstate.com and their site, which is PropertyPond.com for rentals, is something that you definitely want to take a look at and consider. Beyond that, think about any way that you can create content that includes user-generated content, but content about the neighborhoods and the cities that are in your market so that you can generate more SEO for those search terms and deliver more traffic from Google to your site and not just from your own efforts. And then, again, investigate home financing opportunities. This is something that, again, I really think there's a great opportunity for, but it really depends on your brokers and whether they'd be accepting of it or not. There are a lot of brokerages out there nationwide who are heavily invested in their mortgage stores as well. But if that's not the case in your market, then I think having some sort of home financing opportunity or sponsorship would be a great way to help fund the site and help you drive more money for instance, building out a better mobile platform or things like that. And then consider licensing additional off-market data. Everything that Zillow and Trulia does off-market is generally, it's content that they've licensed. And I know it costs more to license that and display it to the public, but if you really want to win that SEO battle for property addresses and things like that, you're going to need that data and you need to publish it on your site. All right, well, thanks for hanging with me through the entire presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can contact Kevin McQueen directly, and he'll work with me to answer those questions. He's available at kevin@kevinmcqueen.com. Here's the information about him. And again, my name's Todd Carpenter. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you very much.